You can see the screen, right, Megha?
Yes, yes.
All right, perfect. Hello and apologies for the delay. I think there was a technical issue in which even I was stuck in, frankly speaking. So I can't really say much about that. But thank you very much for making it today. It's a Saturday and it's an afternoon. So thank you very much for making it. And let's quickly get around to it because we've wasted enough time. As you know, our topic for today is financial decision making for managers. Both we're looking at the corporate side as well as the personal side. I'm Dr. Mahima Mathur. Just a little bit about myself, very briefly. I'm a lecturer in finance and management for Murdoch University, Dubai. I have been teaching for the last 18 plus years, possibly even more. Prior to that, I was in banking, working for several investment banks and so on in mergers and acquisitions specifically. I have taught with Murdoch for a really long time, since 2010. And I've worked across campuses, that is Singapore, Dubai as well. And I teach a lot of the postgrad and the undergraduate courses. So welcome, and let's get round to it. Please do ask me if you have any questions. I can see some familiar people here, correct? Right? I can see some familiar people whom I know, people who know me as well, right? So let's get on with this immediately. Yes, Abdul Rahman Altaf, you've raised your hand. Do you want to say something? Or are we good? Are we good to go? Okay, just do keep asking your questions, etc. Okay, keep asking your questions and, as we go along, and let's try to make this as interactive as possible. Okay, so let's start off with what do we mean by financial analysis, right? So what is a financial analysis is the main thing. It consists of 4 main aspects, okay? So we have corporate performance, we have investment decisions, financing, and dividend decisions, right? Now, when you're working in any organizations, you will certainly have to make decisions relating to these 4 in one way or another. All right. So basically, what is corporate performance, which we're going to look at as well shortly in a brief way? That is looking at the balance sheet, looking at the numbers, analyzing the numbers. All right. Investment decisions would be, do I have enough funds to invest into another project? Should I get into another project? Okay. Financing decisions relate to money matters. That is, where is the money coming from? Okay. Where will I be funding? Will I be funding internally? Will I be borrowing? And so on. Okay. And dividend decisions basically will be whether I should pay, if I'm a listed company and I have shareholders, how much dividend should I give? All right. How frequently should I give it? And so on. All right. So let's look at this little example here. Okay. And I'm going to try to make it as interactive as possible for you guys so that you can understand things a little bit better, especially the technical parts. Okay. So Microsoft spent 26 billion in 2016 to acquire LinkedIn. They had assets with a book value of 7 billion. 19.2 billion Microsoft paid above the book value. Okay. Now this shows up as something known as goodwill or other assets. Okay. So what do we mean by goodwill or other assets? This is something which is intangible. Why did Microsoft pay so much? Yes. Why were they willing to pay over and above the actual accounting value of the company? Why did they want to go ahead and pay so much more? Reason? Okay. Users, they had access to data. They had access to users, right? They had access to intangible values in terms of the brand name and so on. Okay. So this becomes essential when you are acquiring a company, especially. All right. Now let's have a look and see if we can make some sense of the numbers. All right. So the balance sheet, I'm sure you have all heard of this. Okay. It's also known as a statement of financial position. Okay. It's at one point in time. All the resources that are owned and controlled by an entity, all right, all what is due or what is owed by this entity, all right? So we can see all the investing decisions, the financing decisions, and so on. Which brings us to another very important element, which is liquidity. What is liquidity now? The ease with which we can convert our assets to cash, all right? Now, I'm not sure if you're all familiar with these balance sheet items. But if you aren't, basically assets are divided into two categories, all right? Current assets and non-current assets. Okay, so what are current assets? These are cash and so on, which can easily be converted into cash. This is what the organization, wherever you're working as well, they need for the day-to-day operations. Okay, non-current assets. Okay, these are fixed assets. They're fixed assets which are tangible in nature and intangible as well, like property, plant, investments, equipment, and things like goodwill, brand equity, and so on. Okay. Now, the essential characteristics of a liability basically are, it's a present obligation, right? So we owe something to someone. So it represents an outflow. Are basically for the short term, you just need them for the operating cycle. And non-current liabilities are more long-term in nature, like debentures, mortgage loans, and so on. All right. Okay. Moving on. All right. Very importantly, we have to define something in our balance sheet known as equity, right? So it's basically the residual amount, which is the difference between the assets and the liabilities, right? So equity comprises of contribution by the owners. And if the company is listed, there are several shareholders. It also includes any profits that are retained into the business. All right. Now, I have asked Megha to give you guys all audio rights. So if I do want you to participate in something like a quiz, or if I ask a question or something, please do feel free to switch on your mics, switch on your videos as well. It always helps with that, doesn't it? Okay. So please feel free. As you have rights now to speak as well. So please switch on your audio if necessary. All right. Now here is an income statement of a company, a sample income statement. Just, it's a very general income statement as such, right? As you can see, what we note is we have sales, we have something known as gross profit. From this, we are deducting our selling, our operating expenses, and so on. Okay. Arriving at operating income. All right. And then we're moving on to deduct any other expenses we have to finally come to our net income. Similarly, a balance sheet would look something like this, and it would always be comparative, right? I'm sure if some of you are working and if you've seen the balance sheets, etc., you will see that they are comparative, right? So you can see what's happening year on year, what is going up, what is going down, all right? Things like that. Now, if you look at this balance sheet, and I want everybody to look at it now that we're all here, can you tell me from here what strikes you? What has changed from 2017 to 2018? What do you note are the major changes that are happening? Yes, anyone? Please do. It would be really nice to hear from you guys as well. Go ahead. Who would like to share their thoughts on this? Yeah, anyone who would like to share their thoughts on this? Come on. Zafra? I mean, I can call out some names as well as.
Yeah, I think there's a major change on the deferred tax liabilities.
Okay, and what would that mean? Meaning, what has happened in terms of the tax liabilities? So, it means not paid off something and now that has to be paid.
They paid, yeah. Yeah, they're paid off the tax.
Yes, absolutely right. They paid the tax has happened. They already have paid that and it's no longer due. So we do have to look at these things very minutely to try to understand what's going on in the company. Okay, some useful ratios, and I'm sure a lot of you might know these as well, are the profitability ratios, that is net profit margin, okay, which is net profit by sales, showing me how much I'm earning as a proportion of what I'm selling. Then we have the gross profit margin, which is gross profit by sales. Again, how much gross profit am I making? A company really needs to understand this so that they know where they're going right, where they're going wrong, what can they do next? How do they make sure that their profitability is sustained? Okay, so remember, we're looking at the corporate perspective right now before we move to the personal, right? That is why we're getting into these technical terms and so on. Okay, return on equity is defined as the net profit by the shareholders' equity. Okay, Again, you're trying to see how much profit you're generating as a proportion of the ownership. All right. Very important again for any company to analyze ROE, as we call it, right? Return on assets is the net profit by the total assets. Okay. Again, how much are my assets generating to me? Are they generating profit or not? Is this profit enough? How much is it changing year on year? All right. EBITDA margin. Okay. EBITDA. What is this? Does anybody have any idea? Come on. Let's have some interaction here so that I know that at 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon, everybody is indeed awake and kind of tuned in. Go ahead. Does anybody want to try what is EBITDA? Otherwise, I can pick out people from the list because I'm familiar with a few, right? Go on. Daphne, Abdul Rahman, anybody who would like to tell us what is EBITDA? Okay, earnings before interest, depreciation, and tax, right? Basically, a company has to calculate all its variables, all its profitability as and when all the expenses are incurred. All right. Okay. Turnover ratios, which are important for any company, would be the inventory turnover. That is the cost of goods sold divided by the inventory. How fast am I selling? How fast are my goods turning over? Okay. I don't want to keep too much inventory. Of course, I don't want to keep too much stock with me because that would not be a good idea as well. All right. And days inventory is also very important. That is 365 divided by the inventory turnover. And the receivable collection period. All right. Now, a question for all of you. Please read this and you tell me, what would you recommend? Come on. Let's all try to think and see what would you recommend. Go ahead. You have been tasked with managing the working capital for one of the Ace Hardware stores in Dubai. Currently, its days inventory is 50 days. Receivable collection is 20 days. Payables is 25, which leaves a gap of 45 days. Why is this a problem and what would you recommend? 2 questions that I would like to ask you. Can you think of anything in this? Yes, come on. Guys, it'll be nice to get some different perspectives. Anyone, please. We should try to at least think on these lines. No one? Anyone? What's the problem in this particular case? In this case, we can see that
the inventory holding period is very long. They are holding the stocks for a long.
So and payables is very quick. Payables is 25 days.
5 days, right? Yeah.
It's not matching, which means what? There's a gap, right? Which means how will I pay off if I don't receive the funds? How am I going to pay off what I owe, right? Payables, we said, was 25 days. So therefore, how do we reduce this gap then? How can we shorten this 45-day period? We try to speed up our sales, our inventory. We try to reduce our inventory, correct? Collection period as well. We have to try to speed up and so on. All right. So these are things in a company you would think about. Another very important concept in finance is leverage. Okay. Very, very powerful concept in finance. And what does it mean? It refers to the use of debt, okay, to acquire additional assets. Now, let's say you want to buy a house. All right. Many of us won't just be having the cash ready to buy a house, right? What would we do? We would borrow money, correct? Now, the debt, the use of debt to help us, okay, acquire assets and thereby multiply our wealth creation is called leverage, okay? So the use of financial leverage basically helps you to control your assets better, okay? It helps you to understand your returns and so on, all right? So for example, again, if you see here, if you want to buy a house, for example, okay, in the first situation, you can't borrow money. You have 1 million, you buy a home for 1 million and leave it. In the second situation, you are able to borrow money to buy a home, okay? In which case, you decide you can go in for something much bigger and much better. So haven't you increased your assets already? Before, you would only buy a house worth 1 million. Now, because of the power of borrowing, I can buy a house which is much, much more than my initial reach, as you can see, correct? Fine. I hope that this is also clear to everybody. All right. So as you can see from the balance sheet as well, we're just distinguishing between the assets and the liabilities. All right. And if you've taken a loan in the second scenario, you can see 4 million would be your loan. Of course, some people will say, yeah, but we have to pay it off, right? Yes, of course you will have to pay it off. But the use of debt has also allowed you to purchase something much more beyond your initial reach. Which brings us to the next most important ratio, which is the debt equity ratio. Okay. What is the debt equity ratio? Okay. We can see that it's, as the name implies, total debt to total equity. As a proportion, how much is the debt? Now, would it be beneficial for a company to be having too much debt? That's the question, right? How much debt is appropriate? How much can a company sustain? Now, it will depend and vary from industry to industry. Let's have a look at an example again. Scenario where Pfizer is quite big for us all in terms of the vaccine and all that. So just read this and tell me, what do you think is happening in this industry? Everybody read this and look at this little case that I'm sharing. And please see, what do you think is happening here? What is happening? Why? Why is this the way it is? Yes. Anyone? Anyone? Everyone should kind of participate. You guys have made so much effort and come in. Let's have some discussion on these things as well.
Hi, this is Rohan here.
Yes, hello,
I guess
Rohan.
there's a lot of money invested in research and development,
Okay,
especially in the
Yes, yes. Go ahead. You were saying especially in the
way the things are happening in this world. So basically, companies, especially in pharma, are investing huge in R&D because vaccination development takes a lot of time. So
Yes.
before the next pandemic, obviously, there's a lot of money invested in R&D, especially the top companies.
Yeah. And also, very good point. Thank you very much, Rohan. Also, very importantly, with pharma companies and so on, they are very high risk companies, right? Because they are putting so much money into the unknown, research and development, but into the unknown. It might not work out to anything at all, right? In which case, now companies are outsourcing R&D. That's a very important point here. And even Pfizer has outsourced with BioNTech, as you all know, from Germany as well, correct? So BioNTech has done a lot of the research and development for the vaccine itself. So the risk has been split, in which case banks and other financial institutions find it easier to lend to pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer. Okay. This makes a lot more sense in today's scenario for sure. But also generally speaking, it would be a lot more meaningful from this point of view, right? Okay. Another important aspect in your corporate life will be return on investment. Okay. Understanding this is essential. All right. A very important financial skill, no matter what department you're in, ROI is a must. Okay. If you're an employee in any department, you will need to know this. Okay. And ROE will give you a lot of insight into your firm's actions and their costs and so on and so forth. Okay. So what is ROI? Basically, it's the net profit from a particular project divided by the costs multiplied by 100. Okay. Or the following. But this is meaningless for you in a way. You would apply it, of course, if at your workplace on Excel or whichever way. But how would you interpret this, right? So we're basically seeing how much profit is being generated by an investment. Should I get into an investment, right? This is the big question for most companies. Should I invest more? And if I should invest more, what is my return that I'm going to get? Does it justify the cost? Okay. So there are two types of ROI, anticipated and actual. Anticipated ROI is calculated before the project kicks off, right? So before actually going ahead with the project, what do I estimate? Are the costs, the revenues that will be generated. Actual ROI, of course, is after the project, right? So you have your real figures, your real-time figures, okay? And once the project has concluded, I can then do a calculation and then compare the two and see whether my estimations were as per actual, okay? Now, here's another question to you all. A friend needs to borrow some money from you. Would you prefer he pay you back in 1 year or in 2 years? What would you prefer?
1 year, of course.
Okay. Why? Why should he pay?
Because the value of the money depreciates because of inflation.
Absolutely, right? And this is the basic concept of time value of money, that future cash flows come with a higher degree of uncertainty, right? I would rather take what I have right now than wait, okay? And that brings us to another very important concept, which many of you might be aware of, okay? Called net present value. Okay, now what is net present value? All right, the discount rate is a percentage determined by the company basically, all right? And we're trying to find out whether this investment or a particular project, whether a particular project, okay, is giving me a positive cash flow or not. Remember, in finance, it's a lot about cash flows, right? And I need to find the cash flows today. If I'm investing in a project, the cash flows are coming in the future. So I need to discount them into the present. So right now, what is the value of my investment? Okay. So what is essential will be things like the total number of years of the periods, the discount rate, etc., so that I know what is the value today. Now, again, let's have a look at a very interesting case of Sharp Corporation. I'm sure you all know about Sharp, electronic manufacturers, right? Sharp was the first company to make flat panel displays. Maybe some of you are aware. All right, it had to decide to build even larger displays, right? In 2011, they estimated that they would require an investment of 4.8 billion over 3 years to build a new facility to come out with these new large panels, all right? So the NPV was found to be a negative 2988. Now, I can easily ask any of you, and a lot of you will know this. Daphne, if you're there, you can tell me, should they go in for this investment? Should you go in for this investment, which is showing me a negative NPV? Or anybody, please? Anybody?
No, miss.
No, right? Because a negative NPV means you're not getting your return back, okay, in the time period. All right. Now, despite this negative NPV, Sharp still went ahead. They built the factory and they went ahead and they denied all these problems. And they really had run into such severe financial losses that they had to sell 46% of the plant, okay, to another company. And they sold it for 780 million. But basically, these numbers are so important for us in reality. If we don't look at them closely, if we don't follow them, it's going to be a disaster, and you can see it happening in reality. Some other important statistics or figures or graphs, as you can see, a comparison between Amazon and Netflix, your favorite companies as such, right? So you can see Amazon's total revenues, profits, cash flows, Netflix's total revenues and cash flows. What strikes you over here as very, very different and something which we need to look at? Tell me. Anyone, again, anyone? Anybody? What strikes you here between Amazon and Netflix, cash flows and profits? What do you notice? Yes. No one? Anyone?
I think in terms of net profits, you can clearly see Netflix net profits rising, while faster than Amazon.
Okay.
That's one observation on the net profits.
Okay. Look at the free cash flows, everybody. Look at the free cash flows of Netflix. They are negative.
Yeah, they're pretty high. Yeah.
They're negative. They're very negative, as you can see, correct? Cash flow from operations are also negative. Because why do you think that would be? Why would they have such negative cash flows in comparison to Amazon? What could be any reason for this? Any ideas or thoughts? Of course, both have grown impressively, right? In terms of their revenues, right? But looking at the cash flows, you can see that Amazon is driving its cash flows, as you can see, all right, by its non-cash expenses, management, working capital, and so on. Netflix's are negative cash flows because of heavy investment into content, right? Initially, especially when they had come, they really had to break through with their content development, and that cost a lot of money, all right? So that brings us to brief of the corporate side of finance. Now, of course, there is so much more, and this was just like a taster of the corporate side. Let's go on now to the personal side. Okay, I'm sure you are all very interested in this. Now, I'm going to be sharing a quiz. Okay, I want you to take this quiz and tell me where you stand on this. Okay, so I'm going to share this quiz. Everybody can see it, right? If somebody can't view it, please do tell me. Okay, there are 7 questions. I'll just keep going downwards. Write your answers to these 7 questions and let's see where you stand. Okay, so everybody's doing this. In terms of risk, let's see where you stand on risk. Tell me when I can move downwards, okay? Is everybody done with question 1? Not yet. Just indicate to me. Okay. Just write your answer and keep it, okay? I hope everybody is doing this. Everybody can hear me and everybody can see my screen, right? I'm just checking to make sure so that.
Yes, yes, Dr. Mahima. Yes, thank
Good.
you.
Thanks. Tell me when I should move on, okay? Are you done with 1, everybody? Zafra, done with 1?
Yes, Dr. Mahima, I'm done with 1.
Okay. What about the rest? Rohan, Janet, Jacob? I can see a lot of names.
Yes, miss, I'm answering.
Okay, Daphne. All right.
Yes, good with 1.
Okay, all right. I moved on to 2, yeah? Can I move to the 3rd? Well, are you all done with 2? I can move to the 3rd. Okay. Okay, Rohan, you're at 3 as well, I hope.
Yes, I'm at 3.
Okay, perfect. I'm moving to the 4th because I'm assuming you may have finished with the 3rd. If you haven't, let me know. I hope everybody is with us, like Jay and Janet and so on. Please do. Zafra, you're good?
Yes, Dr. Mahima. Thank you. I'm in the question 4 now.
Okay, good. Moving to 5, shall I? There's just 2 more questions, so let's finish it off quickly. Can I move to 5 and 6, guys? Is that fine, everyone? If I move on to 5 and 6? Abdul Rahman, are you there? Are you doing it? Everybody is done with 5? Rohan, Jay, Janet, Mohammed Ghalib, all of you?
Yes, done.
All good with 5? I'm moving to
Yes,
6.
Dr. Maima. Yeah, with this in
6
question
and then
6.
7.
I'm in, yeah, question
Okay,
6
okay.
and 7.
All right. And there are just 7 questions, so good news. That would be the end of that. So just indicate to me when you guys are done with this 7th. So I can stop sharing and go back to the PowerPoints. All good? All done with 7 as well?
I'm done, Dr. Maima.
Okay. And the rest? Daphne, Arun, Janet, Jay, Rohan, Mohammed Ghalib. Are you guys?
Yes, all done.
Okay, perfect. Because, you know, I can see your name. So it's nice for me to just sort of check on you guys as well. Right? Okay. So now I'm going to go back and share your scores. Now, do you guys think, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Do you guys think that you are high risk takers? Who thinks they're a high risk taker? What's your risk appetite? Right? That's the question that we are trying to answer here, isn't it? So what if you are mostly A's? Are you mostly A's? If anybody is mostly A, you basically, you know, you work hard for your money. You don't want to be the person, you know, who's going to block your own money. You want companies that challenge, of course, the status quo. Okay, take on established businesses, reinvent it, and so on. Is anybody in the, sorry, I'm on A's. Is anybody a mostly A's person? Anybody here who was mostly A's? Anyone who was mostly A? You don't want to, you know, you don't want to overexpose yourself to risk. Nobody is an A, fabulous. B's, what about B's? Anybody who's a B? Mostly B's? I can see people are risk takers here.
Me.
You definitely, okay. That's good. So mostly B's, you want a good balance sheet. You want to analyze things properly as an investor. You want to look ahead, right? You don't want to just see the short term as a B. What about C? Are there lots of C's? Are there a lot of people C's?
Yes, yeah? I'm C.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm
Excellent.
C.
That's good. That's great. So that means that you want to take a bit of a risk. You want a challenge, right? You want innovation. You want to see something different. You don't want to just be in the market for something usual, correct? Anybody who's a D? No one who's a D? Most are B and C, I suppose. D would mean that you're not afraid to go into even foreign markets to invest. Because remember, now we've come into the personal space. So as an individual, you can invest anywhere in the world, right? Now, why would you need to invest? Why would you need to do financial planning? Obviously, for unforeseen circumstances, right? Beat inflation, right? Understand your family's future and make sure that savings are always there for any eventualities. And therefore, financial literacy is the key, all right? Most importantly, where will you invest? Do we have any people who invest in shares? Stocks, they are called, of course, in the US markets. Anybody who has invested in any shares? Anyone who has, an appetite to go into the stock market? Yes?
Yes, I do it through...
That's perfect. So you would do either mid cap, small cap, large cap, depending on your appetite, right? Or for risk and return and so on, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Absolutely. All right. Bonds, of course, are a more safer way to invest your money. Okay. Because your return is guaranteed. You are getting an interest on this. It's like an IOU, right? So you're going to definitely get a fixed interest payment on this in the future. Now, what do you look at before investing? Now, you told me that you invest, one of you said, right? So what do you look at? You've given it to your bank or whatever, is it? And they do it on your behalf. But otherwise, if you were to do it individually, what you could look at are the following, ratios. The P ratio, the price earnings ratio. This is extremely important when deciding whether to invest in a company or not, right? You see the current share price, okay? Last 12 months of earnings projected if possible, and calculate a forward PE too, to see where the company will be headed. So P, is something you have to see, especially if you're investing as an individual. There's a PEG also that you can go into. So what is a PEG? Price earnings to growth. So for example, a company with a PE of 30 and a 15% expected growth rate will have a PEG ratio of 2, 30 by 15. All right. So these are ratios which we have to look at if you're investing individually. If you're doing it through a broker or something or through an institution, that's different. But yourself, if you want to do analysis, you would have to look at these. You would have to look at payout. Does the company, if you're investing in a share, you do have an expectation for a dividend, right? So for sure, you need to know what has been the payout traditionally in the past. And earnings per share, very important. Earnings per share, okay, indicates how much money the company is making for each share, okay? And therefore, corporate value can be established from this. So if you're investing on your own, do definitely look at these ratios, all right? Now let's look at the different types of stocks you can invest in, because everybody really likes to get into the market. Obviously, we should get into stocks that are undervalued. These are known as value stocks, right? Value stocks have typically the following characteristics. That is, they're a mature business, okay, steady growth rates, relatively stable earnings, etc., paying dividends. A nice stock, which is a value stock, is J&J, Johnson & Johnson. Don't know if any of you have invested here or considered this. Of course, I'm not proposing that, but I'm just showing this as an example. What do you notice here? Okay, I've just taken the example here with Johnson & Johnson, the share price movement versus the Standard & Poor 500 index. Okay, so versus the index, and you can see here the black line. Okay, I'm sorry, maybe it's not visible to you. The black line indicates the S&P 500 movement. The blue line indicates Johnson & Johnson's share price movement. So what can you say about Johnson & Johnson here in this situation? Who can tell me? Well, who can tell me? The black line is the S&P 500. The blue line is Johnson & Johnson. So what can you say about Johnson & Johnson? Who can tell me? Anything. If you were to invest tomorrow into J&J, what would this graph tell me?
That the share price will go up in future.
Definitely it should also, because now they've come out with that one-shot vaccine. So for sure, this is an undervalued stock. It's performing average, right? This is the average index is above. Okay, the average S&P 500 is above J&J share price. You can see that consistently over the time period. So this is a stock which is undervalued then, right? In our opinion. don't you think? Right? This is a stock we can get into. This is something maybe in the future can rise. Now, obviously, don't hold me to this, but there is a strong possibility, right? Especially with the one-shot vaccine coming out, correct? And again, I'm not giving you advice on this. We're just considering this as a situation, right? All right, I hope that's clear. Another company, all right, before we go into growth stocks, which could be a value, is Procter & Gamble. Have you all heard of P&G or Procter & Gamble? It's an FMCG company. Maybe you've all heard of it. You use their products.
Yes.
Right? That's, again, if you look at the charts for P&G, again, they are underperforming. They are undervalued as such. So, whenever you're getting initially into the stock market, you have to look for these kind of indicators, because you don't want to get in too high, because you're not going to be able to make anything then, right? So those kind of stocks are growth stocks, okay? Where the revenue and earnings are going faster than the average business in their industry or the market as a whole, all right? They've developed something very innovative. They've thought out of the box and so on, right? So how do you find these growth stocks as such? You have to identify long-term trends, right? E-commerce, digital advertising. Now, these guys have peaked already, like Facebook and all. They're quite on the higher side. Amazon, right? Those who got in earlier have done so well. Tesla, etc. Right? What is coming up now, again, is green and renewable energy, sustainable energy. That's a stock that is really promising again, right? And I'm sure if you research according to the parameters we discussed and look at some of the data, you will see that this is indeed a very promising industry. So the key is get in before, right? No point. You can get in when the company is already mature too. Like an Amazon, if I were to invest today, I could, but I wouldn't be able to invest as much funds, right? Because the share price is already so high, correct? So go in faster. So something you can think about is green, renewable, sustainable energy. Very important. Let's have a look at Apple now. Again, the black line is the S&P. Apple is the blue line. Can you see how vast it is over and above the average? You can see that, right?
Would it mean that Apple is an overvalued stock in that sense?
It is.
Can you define
it?
that?
It is definitely, yes. It is overvalued. And even now, if you were to get in, it's got a very high share price, right? It's trading at a very high level. So as an initial investor or a new investor, maybe I won't have so much capacity to put so much money into this because each share is so expensive, correct? So I would have fewer shares, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. And I think what happens is markets are cyclic. So if it's an all-time high, then there is possibility for it to drop.
There is possibility again. There is possibility again. Now, if you notice about Apple, another very interesting trend is just last year, look how low the price was, right? Very low price. And, Apple had to go into the market and actually do a buyback. That is a share buyback, as we call it, to boost the share price. They actually did that, right? To uplift the price of the share. So yes, companies do have to, get into these measures as well if they find that they are too undervalued. Right now, of course, they don't face that problem, but they've done it in the past. You can see the movement over the last few years as well. Look, it was so low. Look, just in 3 years or 4 years rather, it's really plummeted. It's gone so higher, right? Okay. Another very important thing to see is just some trends I'm showing you or sharing rather for some important companies like Shopify. We can see the 3 years sales growth CAGR, that is the compounded annual growth rate from beginning to end for 3 years, 1 to 3 years. Shopify has grown 183%. Can you imagine that? That's huge. Square has grown 63%. I don't know if you're all familiar with this digital payments network. Netflix 29, Amazon 28. So you can see that these are the industries that have really shown a lot of growth. Shopify, of course, really going out of the charts. Okay. Mutual funds is another easy way for you to invest in. It's a pool that is created. You go to your bank or any financial institution, choose a nice fund. But how do you choose it? You'll have to look at these factors. You'll have to look at the trends. You'll have to look at historical data. You'll have to look at what are the projections for the future, right? So you have to look at your risk appetite and you'll have to see what return are you expecting. Now, here comes a favorite for everybody these days, isn't it? Cryptocurrency. Something everybody would like to get into or not sure about it. You know that it was pioneered by somebody called Satoshi Nakamoto in 2008. He wrote a paper on this, in fact, called Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer review of the electronic cash system. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever used a cryptocurrency or its derivatives like Bitcoin and so on, NFTs and so on. Has anybody come across this, or do you use it for anything? Are any of you using this, Bitcoin?
Well, I invest only in commodities which I understand. I don't understand cryptocurrency so well. And I think it's very volatile to start with.
It is very volatile. It is now, Bitcoin is one of the derivatives of crypto. It's a type of cryptocurrency, of course, which is very popular. And that's the one that's been very volatile. I don't know if you read about this, but just recently, somebody invested in digital art to the extent of $69.3 million, right? What is NFT? Anybody knows? Again, like Bitcoin, but it's digitalized art. Imagine that. Into cryptocurrency will be custodianship, okay, will be who is looking out for you. Like in the stock market and all, we have the commissions and, you know, we have regulatory bodies. Who is regulating this? That is the big question mark here. One. Two, the other big question mark is, I'm not sure if you've read all this as well on crypto, but you know, you have a personal key when you invest into these instruments, right? You have a personal key. Now, if you lose that key, you've lost your money. And you may have read many have lost their money because they lost their key, in the sense they forgot their password. What do? How do you remember your password? People are actually drilling it onto metal and you know, putting it into a safe and so on and so forth. Because if you forget your one-time key, that's it, you're done for. So yes, it is very volatile, as you pointed out, right? Now, of course, it's basically it's like a token. It's like a medium of exchange, again, a payment system as such. Right? But again, like I mentioned, governance is going to be an issue here. Okay. How does this proof come? The cryptographic proof comes in the form of transactions that are verified, recorded in a program called the blockchain, right? Now here it's not so popular in here yet. I mean, I don't think we can use Bitcoin as easily as we can as a medium of exchange. In the US and so on, yes. You know, through Robinhood and so on, a lot of companies are getting into this and they are using it as well. It has not yet become so popular here because of the reasons mentioned. So it depends again on your risk appetite. Again, Bitcoin is trading above 60,000K, but it's volatile, right? And this is probably not the right time because it's gone so high again, isn't it? So the bottom line will always be risk, return, and timing. How much risk can you take? How much return do you want? And what is your time horizon? Isn't it? All right. Thank you very much. That brings us to the happy ending of that presentation as such. Are there any questions that I can answer for anybody in terms of this? Of course, finance is such a vast field. In 1 hour. Clearly, we cannot discuss everything, but this was just like a taster for everybody, right? Just a taster to try to understand both the corporate side as well as the personal side. Any questions that I can help answer? Yes, Rohan.
Just a comment. I think investment is all about staying invested over a period of long term. I mean, I basically choose not to get swayed by any kind of occurrence, especially when markets are down. I, in fact, increase my investments. And I think that has really paid me off in the last 5 years.
Because you're getting in undervalued. You're absolutely right? You're getting in at a lower value. And then, of course, the only way is up, right? That's what you're saying, Rohan? Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, because, you know, speculating and, you know, how the markets are going to move is not something that we can do. So that's why I have a very disciplined approach towards my goal and working towards it.
Very good. And I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing it. It's, you know, that's the thing with finance and investing. It's a personal thing, right? It's how much risk do you want to take? Do you want to be in it for the short term? Some people want to just quickly earn a quick buck and then get out, right? So it really depends. There's nothing wrong in that. Again, it depends on what is your mental outlook on this. What are you looking for, right? Do you want to be in it for the short term, long term, and so on, right? So from those points, you have to examine everything then, right? Okay, anything else with anyone? Any other comments? Yes. Because Daphne, as you know, and I know you know this, bonds have the coupon interest rate, which is guaranteed. right? Now it's legally binding on any company to pay the interest as well as face value. All right. Definitely, for bonds, it is guaranteed because it is a liability for the company. The company has to pay, legally speaking. That's why. That is why, right? So yes. So I can see a lot of people had said, picked A's, B's. So really it depends on your outlook of risk, isn't it? So what I would say is that if you're, wanting to invest, because this is a market where everybody wants to get into something new, you can think first, go in small, and go in for something undervalued, which you think will go up. But before you invest, look into the historical data, look at what projections are there and so on. Be literate, try to understand